Hey, James Arter here. Hope you're doing well. So Logic's bounce in place feature is a really handy tool to use. I'm going to show you 5 different ways to use it. If that's something you're interested in, stick around. As always, if you enjoyed the video, hit the old thumbs up. If you want to hear more and you're interested in more videos, then just hit the subscribe and the notification bell and you'll get notified of upcoming videos. Also, if you sign up to the mailing list, I'll send you a whole bunch of free stuff. You'll get an EQ cheat sheet as well as some one-shot drum samples you can use in your mixes. Okay, let's jump in. So the first one is a really commonly used one. It's so you can bounce out MIDI controlled software instruments so you can free up processing power. For example, something like this, like Keyscape or lots of other rich piano plugins can have so many samples that they can take up quite a lot of RAM, but sometimes some CPU as well. It can be really handy so you can bounce them out and reclaim the processing power. I'll also use this first example to show you all of the different features that Bounce in Place has. So all you need to do is select the regions that you want to bounce out. In this case, I'm going to bounce out the whole thing. So you select the whole lot. Another way to do it is to just click on the track here and that whole lot highlights everything. But if you just want to do one portion of it, then you can as well, because these are all in separate regions. You can just click this first region here and it will just bounce out the first region. In this case, I'm going to do all of them. And all you need to do is hit Control and B and you'll get this little dialog box up. Right at the top, you can call it whatever you like. We're going to call it Piano Bounce. That makes sense. Destination is going to record to a new track. That's all you need to do. And then source, this is whatever you want to happen to the track that you're bouncing. Often I'll leave it on mute because once you've bounced it out, you don't need to hear it again. But if you choose leave, then obviously it will remain as it is, or delete, it will totally get rid of the track. Most of the time you don't want to do delete because you might want to go back into it and make some changes. This one that's currently grayed out, include instrument multi outputs, is really handy and will be used if you're doing something with multiple outputs. So like a drum kit or if you're just using a sampler with multiple instances in it. That way it will bounce out each individual part. So if it's a drum kit, it will be like kick, snare, toms, overheads and whatnot. Bypass effect plugins. This will be if you just want to bounce the instrument itself. For example, if you look over here, I've also got one other plugin on it, which is a compressor. If I want to include that, then I'll leave this unchecked and it will bounce with a compressor on it. If you check it, then of course it will bypass it. Now these next two I'll come back in just a second, but this bottom one, include volume and pan automation. Now you only really want to check that if you do actually have some automation on a track that you want to bounce within it, but mainly you'd only choose that if volume and pan automation is relevant. If you tick this, then whatever volume and of course pan you're currently set at over here, I'm about just under halfway, it will bounce it at that level. If you don't want it to do that and you just want it to be at its highest level, then just uncheck that and it will bounce as if it's at 0. Now these last two can be quite important, include audio tail in file. 9 times out of 10 you want to click that and I'll show you why. Here's a couple that I bounced earlier. As you can see, this is the original MIDI part and this is the same MIDI part but now turned into audio. If you look at the ends here, you'll see that one is longer than the other. If you don't tell it to include the audio tail, then it will just cut it off at the end here. Whereas if you do, it will allow the tail to run. So what's happened here is one of them you'll be able to hear the reverb on it and the other one you won't. Let's just have a little look. So you can hear it, you can hear the click as it cuts it off there. Whereas this one shouldn't do that. So in general, you want to leave that checked. So if we'll just go back and we'll just bounce that out. So once that's bounced out, you've got the audio there and we can now just unload those plugins. You can even just turn off the track if you like so. And then let's hide that and that's out of the way and we've regained a little bit of CPU and RAM. Beautiful. The next one is to use it to bounce out flexed audio. So say you've got a track and you've done a whole load of editing within flex time. On some computers, and especially if you've done lots of edits, that can be quite CPU intensive. So if you bounce that out, that means you can turn off the track like you did with the software instrument and again, reclaim the CPU power. Now, this will generally work on any track that you've flex timed. So for example, one really handy one can be is if you're using it on drums and you've done a whole load of editing on there and you just want to tidy things up and turn them into flat audio files. Same method works as before. Control bounce. Now what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to uncheck the include pan and volume automation because this is mono. So if I leave that checked, it's going to make it a stereo file, which is of course what we don't want. So let's do that. And there you go, the bounce file just beneath it. I'll show you what happens if you do include the pan and volume automation. And as you can see here, I've got it panned all the way to the left. So now the file has been created as a stereo file, and you're only getting it on the left hand side because that's considered automation. That's fine if you actually need the automation, if there's actually some automation in the track which is doing something relevant to the track. But if it's not and it's just a mono track, then make sure you uncheck that. Now the next one is if you want to print your effects for mixing. So for example, if you've got someone else who's going to be mixing the track for you, or perhaps if you're just taking the audio out into another DAW to mix, you can make sure that all the effects, all of the work that you've done on this gets taken over as well. So for example, on this track, I've just got a few plugins. I've got an EQ doing something fairly drastic. I've got some saturation and I've got a tremolo. So now let's have a listen to that. I don't want the mixing engineer to try to recreate that because they're never going to get it exactly the same and it's just going to be a waste of time. So let's bounce that and then that'll be good to go. And there's the track all bounced with the effects in it. So the next one is very, very similar in the sense that we're bouncing effects, but this time it's more specifically based around automation. And then I'm going to take that a little bit further. So if we look at this track, I've got a few different processes going on with the automation. And they're making changes within the plugins themselves over here. So I'll just see what that sounds like. So firstly, if we just bounce that out in exactly the same way we did before, ensure that include volume pan automation is checked this time. Now, firstly, that will be really useful for, like in the last example where we're giving it to an external mixer. It means that all of what you've done there, all the effort that you've put in with the effects and the automation are printed in the track, so they're good to go. They're not going to change. The other thing about this is you can now see from the waveform what is actually happening there. So before, because it was just a guitar amp simulator, the only audio you could see was the DI of the guitar. Now you can actually see exactly what's happening with all the effects. So it's a very good visual aid to start off with. But now we're going to take that one step further. And this is where I find Bounce in Place is really handy because it can be really fun and really useful to just now manipulate the audio. So let's see, we're going to take this little part here. And I'm just going to do something fun with it. So let's see, we're going to take this part and I'm just going to have a little bit of fun. And let's just tidy that up a little bit. Now instantly we've got something else I can use there in the track. I'm not even sure if it's going to make any sense at the moment, but let's give it a go. So I'm just going to put this anywhere in a track and see if I can use it in a fun way. Let's go back here, maybe to the beginning. Okay, cool. Nice. So we've got all of that, and I'm just going to play around with it and see what happens. And there we go, instantly just something creative you can do now that it's actually just bounced audio. Now the last one is kind of a tip to help with productivity. Now, for example, if you've got a guitar amp simulator, there we go. This one's Wall of Sound, so it's been taking an amp sound and it's going through a cab simulator and has various other functions on here like EQ and compression and whatnot. Now, I know that I'm not the only one, that once you start delving into changing guitar amp sounds or just, in this case, changing the sound of a guitar cab, it's very, very easy to just disappear down a rabbit hole and you're just chasing your tail and you totally lose yourself. And before you know it, you spent half an hour trying to tweak this guitar sound when, you know what, it was fine half an hour ago. The first sound that you pulled up and you were happy with, that was absolutely fine. But you come back, maybe you'll come back another day and you have a listen, you think, oh, maybe I can just change that, maybe I can tweak that further. Well, using bounce in place can be really handy to just commit to that sound. The sound is working in the track, so just commit it. So we'll just do the same thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn off and hide that previous track, and it's out of the way. So now we just have the audio there of that guitar, which you spent so much time getting to exactly where you wanted it to be, and it sounds lovely. Let's see how lovely it sounds. Lovely. It sounds great. I've got no problems with that. But now it's got no effects on it. It's just audio. It's just a guitar sound that you chose. And using bounce in place is just a really handy way to commit to your choices so you can just move on. For me, I've found that invaluable because now you can just start focusing on what the track actually needs instead of going back to something which was absolutely fine in the first place. So that's it. That's 5 ways in which I use bounce in place in Logic. But there are lots of other things that you can do with it. So how about we start up a little conversation below, hit something in the comments, and we'll talk about all the other places that you use it. I'm interested to know what you do. If you liked the video, do hit the thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe, you'll get notified of upcoming videos. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.